Welcome to the Feminae Christi podcast, a labor of universal love in service to restoring the divine feminine principle, spoken through wisdom, eternal love, and devotion to immaculate truth. I'm your host, Salwa, here in sacred devotion to walking this journey with you, not from a place of above or below, but from within. Hi, welcome to the Feminae Christi podcast, episode 10. This is a big one, you guys, for two reasons. One, the subject matter by which this topic wants to be revealed and taught is pretty heavy, but it's so important to talk about. So for that reason, it's big. And two, because I just received the knowing that this is the final episode for season 1, which, truth be told, I'm kind of excited about, because to every season, there's a reason. And season 1 was really to bring you through the spheres of dissension. It's almost like that chapter in the school. And we can complete that one, move on to the next. And my hope is maybe we can have a little more lighthearted fun, because, oh my gosh, these topics have been heavy. And I have done my best to deliver it in a way where I feel and I hope that you can receive it easily and maybe has some humor involved and all the things that our personality can kind of serve through. But at the same time, I'm excited to complete the season of the Spheres of Descension. If you're new here, go back and listen from the beginning at some point. You don't have to stop right now and go back, but just know that this has kind of been like chapter 1 of school. The School of Feminae Christi, the School of Salwa. Chapter 1, completing after this episode, but this episode is important, and I can see why it was kind of saved for the finale, because I think it's this cloud that lives over a lot of humanity at this current moment. And people will go to great lengths to try to fix every single other thing and ignore the elephant in the room, which is this cloud. So we're going to just go straight to the cloud, and we're going to really understand at what age this starts to happen and why. Real quick, before we dive right in, just want to remind you that you can watch this episode on YouTube, or you can watch or listen on Spotify, or you can just simply listen on all podcast platforms. I also want to ask that if you receive from this episode today, that you ask your heart to place someone in it that could benefit from this message, and you pass it to them. I think especially today's message is so important, and we just don't know who is needing to hear it. As you know, episodes 1 through 9 have been all about the spheres of dissension, which are essentially our powers. These are powers that we come to as a human soul through our evolution and ascension process. But in the meantime, it can feel like very challenging obstacle courses that really make it not fun to be here. And furthermore, can be really tricky and manipulative to catch and know that we are in the sphere of dissension and we are not quite understanding the assignment to transcend it to be in the power. So I kind of broke this down and took you on a little journey. Won't recap on all of them. You have free will. If you're interested, go back and listen. Today, we are going to the final 2 that we had yet to cover. I have been observing these 2, and I've been like, I know your time is coming. And I know that I'm going to know when your time is coming. And as I've been receiving reminders left and right of the importance of this, it was just like this sacred convergence to the episode that is going to be 10th, the completion, the bringing home the spheres of dissension on episode 10. And I want to start off by saying this. You guys know I look at patterns and wirings, and I also, from that higher perspective that I so honorably get to go and see things from sometimes, I like to see where things are trending so that we can really understand as a collective where to be the most mindful of that they show up. However, please know that this shows up everywhere. The 2 spheres of dissension that we're going to go into today are 1, zeal of death, and 2, rage. Rage and zeal of death going together. It's like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it makes sense. And furthermore, I want to say this because it was put on my heart to say so. While many people deal with these 2 spheres of dissension, right now, these 2 are at the highest boiling point of showing up in our teenagers, which is why I'm dedicating this episode to teenagers and parents of teenagers. However, anybody that's been a teenager needs to know and watch and understand and be aware, because a lot of the wiring that takes place and the rewiring that needs to take place for us to transcend these 2 spheres of dissension happens in our teen years. Now, zeal of death. Zeal of death is a lot like it sounds. It's a desire to die. It is a desire to just like tap out of this life. It is a desire to say, game over, I'm out. And what it looks most like, let's just call it what it is: suicide, thoughts of suicide, desire to commit suicide, attempts to commit suicide, suicide. It is big and it is heavy, and we are seeing it so much in our teens. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is something that I witness and I live with through my daughter. And I have her permission to talk about this. And while I really honor her privacy, and I'm not going to go into full detail of everything that I've been through with her and witnessed her, and that's not even me as her. I'm sure for her, feeling it and thinking it is so much more. This is a big part of my life. And it is very challenging to be in this work and to know that I'm here to anchor the light and to watch her go through her initiatory season of these dark things that are waiting for her to understand and to transmute. But in the process, it is dark. So, for that reason, I'm very inspired to really talk more about it and what it's like also to be the parent to a teen that is suicidal. But I also want to be so clear that I know that there are adults that are suicidal. I know that there is a wiring that leads you to believe that it would just be easier to not be here. So I am not holding this condition to just teens. It's just that it's in my heart right now and in every bit of my being that is being guided to really dedicate this episode to teens because that is where it starts. And for them to understand where this zeal of death, descension sphere starts to show up and why. And we're gonna bring rage along because even though it's a separate sphere of dissension, they really catapult each other to create this perfect storm. Not always, but often. Like I said, we look at trends. We look at trends because if it's happening in more than others, and it is really boiling up to be brought up to awareness for all to learn from. A challenge, especially in the collective, is an opportunity in the collective. So we get to observe it and witness it and thank it and return it to light by really learning from it. So that's what we're doing here today. And I'm just dedicating this to teens because I know how hard it must be for them to feel like they're doing this alone. And if they go to the only support system that they know how, they're going to be in trouble. And it's just this like perfect storm to suffer in silence. But adults go through it too. And I'm also holding you all in the intention of this episode. So, seal of death. Let's talk about that. The zeal of death is a self-given verdict. There is a point where you are at the threshold of your suffering and you decide it would be so much easier not to be here. When you have those thoughts, those moments, know that that zeal of death is coming through. And the zeal of death, what it really is an invitation to become your badge of life. But the process to transcend it from zeal of death to badge of life can be very challenging. It can be very lonely and it can be very spiraling. And it is very dangerous for humans not to know what is happening in that space because the darkness loves to come in and really hijack your life force energy in that space and time where you are to really transcend that zeal of death into a badge of life. Now, why teens? Why are our teens right now being haunted with suicidal thoughts? It is important for teens to understand. I'm going to go back to those pivotal years during puberty and explain to you why this is the entry point for the zeal of death to really show up so that we can be aware of what is happening behind the story. And this is for all of you. This is for anybody that suffers in silence with the thought of suicide. All children are born very tethered to light. You're born tethered to light because there's this child pure period of life where you are still developing and understanding your free will. And you could say you have it, but you don't really have it, right? You have your parents kind of telling you what to do. And so free will, it's like this testing ground, but as a child, you are very tethered to your light. Think of it as a string and it's like really raveled and it's got your soul. And no matter what, you are going to be tethered to light because you are a child and you are innocent and you don't know. So you're not held to that standard of knowing. And as a child, you're not really given as much freedom to exercise free will. So the tethering is tighter because it's keeping you in a safe space. It's almost like the universal laws we're observing at what phase of life will the soul be able to enter the initiatory period where it can really play with its free will, cause and effect, and use it to work its way back to the light. So as a child, you're very tethered to the light, and that cord is very tight. So we'll call them teenage years. 12, 13 is really pivotal. However, for some children, it's earlier, for some, it's later. But this is kind of like the little entry point. What is happening beyond the story? And I'm talking beyond the story because in the story, of course, you start to have school drama, drama with friends. You start to maybe think of dating and you have heartbreak. So there's a lot of like storylines that support the chaos. And then, of course, we throw in the hormones. But beyond the story, at a soul level, what is happening? What is happening when you're about to enter your teenage years is that this tethering to the light starts to loosen up a little bit. It's like a loosening of the grip. And it's not loosening because you're not a child of the light. It is not loosening because you have any less access to the light. It is loosening because it has a contractual obligation to honor your free will. And at this stage of the soul evolution, give you the freedom to understand free will, cause and effect, and to understand the chaos of being separated from your light so that you can understand the bliss of returning to it by choice. And think of the freedom that you start to have as a teenager, right? You really get to exercise your free will more. You have more choice, you have more freedom. You start to have more of a life that your parents don't always know about. You eventually get a license that you can drive without them. The freedom comes with a lot of responsibility. And the freedom is part of receiving the gift of free will. But it is a big testing ground. And it is the point where the soul is able to really start its karmic school. Now, some children start it earlier. Keep in mind that this is just, trends and every soul is a little different. But this is the stage of the game where you're loosening that grip to be tethered to light, knowing that you will eventually use your own free will to retether yourself to the light, but it has to be by free will, by choice. And until then, you as a soul have freedom to experience what it's like if you don't choose to return to the light. When the soul is becoming untethered in that way, to have the freedom to return by free will, that is a space and time where you're very susceptible to outer influences. Who knows this? The dark. Now, in order to mostly receive from this, I don't want us to perceive shadow as something outside of us, but there are influential forces for the light and the dark. So you become susceptible for these influential energies to see your shadows and to like really go in there and stir some shit up because they can. And for the forces that are here to stir up the darkness, it is very much their win if you live in your darkness. It is very much their win if you do not remember that light tethering is innately yours. It is just waiting for you to remember it and claim it. So for them, it's like winning if they see a teen depressed, if they see a teen feeling lonely, all of these things, because they can't physically bring you down, but they can manipulate your mind for you to bring yourself down. And that is where mental health comes in. Now, if you haven't yet, please watch episode 2 because I talk about how we transcend darkness and how these forces work a little bit more. But know that in that space of the tethering loosening so that you can use your free will to return to your own light tethering that is always there for you. There is a space of having to learn some things by the school of cause and effect, understanding the power of our choices. But also, there's a lot of susceptibility for these dark manipulative forces to entry point through the mind and get you to want to be in your shadow, to want to spread the shadow and to see everything as shadow. So being aware of that is key. Yeah, we get taught about puberty and that your body parts are going to look a little different and you're going to grow some hairs here and there. Like we talk about all that. Can we talk about the part where you are going to have to rise the way that you choose to live in the light? Otherwise, if you just cruise through it, you are going to be spiraled down. Can we talk about that? We don't really talk about that. So I'm going to talk about that. This is key for children to know when they're going into puberty. You are being given space to have free will to choose the light, and you will be free to experience what it's like when you don't. You're also being given freedom to work through some of your karma. So I'm going to give you examples of how these influential forces of the dark can really come in and hijack you and keep you in your dark. One of them, and this is a sneaky one, so sneaky. And keep in mind that I'm talking to teens, but this is for everybody. If you're an adult, you're still very much susceptible to this. One, social media. I cannot tell you enough how much, whether you want to admit it or not, social media, especially TikTok, is overwhelming your nervous system. Why? Because we are constantly receiving information, whether you want to be aware of it or not. You walk into a room, you're receiving information. There's a piece of furniture there. I'm receiving that it's white. I'm receiving that it's this. There's a person there. I'm receiving this. And then I'm putting the thought and the observation through my heart so that my heart calculates an emotion about it. And now I'm just processing a lot of information. We are always processing information. We are receiving it and we are giving it. When you enter a loop of TikTok, here's what's happening. You are in overwhelm. You cannot even fully receive anything anymore. It would be impossible. So your nervous system hits this overwhelm point where it has to numb out. It has to fragment. It has to say, listen, I can't all be here because if I did, I would have to process so much information that it would be overwhelming and I would have to override mission and check out. So I'm going to override the way that I'm supposed to be here in my fullness and fragment myself so that a part of me doesn't have to be here receiving this information. And then it fragments another part of me and another part of me. It fragments itself so much that it can be on the receiving of all of this information, which you might think is enjoyable. You might think it's silly. It makes you laugh. You might think this is the only thing that keeps me from thinking about my life. Guess what? Because it is numbing you out is artificial peace. And I have talked about this. The artificial peace numbs out emotions temporarily, but emotions and feelings will always come back to be honored with your heart intelligence. So maybe you can scroll and you can be in your loop and you can watch people, I don't know, chew food out loud and do all the dumbest things that they're doing that you're like, this is not harmful. This is not harmful. It's not what they're doing. It is that you have now entered this treadmill of receiving information. And in order for your nervous system to not be overwhelmed by that, it has to fragment itself. And now you are a fragmented being. And when it is time to come back to wholeness, to process the things that really do require your wholeness, you can't. It's too much. And that's when we have to justify this feeling of too muchness and create stories that go with it. And a lot of times it is the people that are the closest to us, that we love the most, that are meant to be our support system to return us to our wholeness, that start to look like the villain. Which leads me to my second point. The darkness will influence your mind by making you believe that those that are your biggest blessings are your biggest burdens. You will start to look at your parent, your sibling, as the devil. How smart to infiltrate your mind and influence your thoughts enough that we are going to create demonic entities within the family structure. How sneaky and how smart. You have to know that if you start looking at your biggest blessings, your wife, your children, your parent, and they start to be the villain in your story, that thought is not of the light. It scares me so much to hear these stories. I recently heard one of the child killing the parent and the sibling. You hear stories like that all the time. Or children with mental health hurting their parents. And it is the hardest thing to hear. But to me, it's even harder to not speak on. And I have really been waiting for the right time to speak on this because, like I said, my daughter is a beautiful reminder. Mental health is not a joke, but what is behind it is these forces getting into your thoughts and finding a way to get your thoughts to view everything around you as the burden, as the bad guy. And all of a sudden, you see yourself against the world. It's me against the world, and nobody gets me, and I'm suffering in silence, and nobody loves me. These forces love to put you on an island where there is no one that's going to understand you. Because guess what's next? If you are on an island and you're all alone and you're suffering and nobody understands you and everybody is the devil, the next step is to just convince you that it's easier to check out. The next step is to say, listen, nobody here is going to get you. You're alone. Just pull the trigger. Just take the medicine. Just cut a little deeper. It is so important to know that while these feelings are very big and very real, they are not yours. They are your feelings being influenced by energetic forces whose job is to calibrate the dark. Now, let's not give them the glory that they're this big, like, fighter for the dark and it's like light versus dark. I don't even like to give them that acknowledgement. I think of them as minions. I think of them as minions and they're Team Dark and their job is to work for the light and be reminded they work for the light. Because here's the thing, light needs to be calibrated with dark on this planet. So I like to look at the angelic and light beings, with their wings and all like beautiful and celestial. And then there's these little minions. And the little minions have the job to calibrate the light because Otherwise, we can't be here and matter. So they're just like, like little minion voices, and it's not even important enough, but it's sneaky enough. And once it's sneaky enough, it makes its way into your important enough. And all of a sudden, these little minion thoughts become your important thoughts. And the only one that has the power to make them not important thoughts is you. And the most important thing to be able to do is to recognize when these thoughts are not yours. So, my invitation to any teen or adult that starts having these thoughts is to bring the thought and observe it. If you can get yourself to a non emotional, escalated place, because trust me, I don't say that lightly. Once again, I have the best teacher here, and I know what it's like to be so much in the emotion that you can't really observe a thought because you become the thought. But to get yourself to a place where you can observe the thought and just ask the simple question: is this the voice of my fear, or is this the voice of love? Is this the angel on my shoulder, or is this the devil on my shoulder? And just because you know that it's the devil doesn't mean that you need to be able to fix it, but just being able to identify that if it is the little devil, then you know that there is illusion to that, because darkness and fear and those thoughts are illusion. The truth is light and love. That is your truth. Now, how far removed you are from that truth is where your pain and suffering takes place, but it's also where the greatest opportunity takes place, because now you are being given the space and the freedom to, through cause and effect and free will and power of choice, make choices that are going to return you to that light. And when you do return to that light, it is going to feel exponentially more blissful, more meaningful, more powerful, because you know what you had to go through to return to that light. But only you can return to that light. And when the zeal of death is activated in your field, it is this constant temptation of grass is greener on the other side, life is easier not here. But guess what? You are the receiver of eternal life. You have divine inheritance. You have eternal life. Your soul is limitless, it is boundless, and we bring back the power of our thoughts. Mental health right now is at an all-time highest, and it needs to be taken seriously, because the power of the mind is what's at stake for our consciousness battle that is at the bigger picture of this cosmic war. And your thoughts are so powerful. And your ability to pause your thoughts is even more powerful. And that is something that everything in this world is currently being designed to not allow us to do. Can we reach the point of stillness so we can receive the higher intelligence? People are wired to pulling up their phone, scrolling. People are wired to enter the judgment and comparison mode. And I'm going to touch on that too, because this feeds the zeal of death. Judgment. You are receiving information all the time. What judgment is, it's information that you create to be able to calibrate and balance the scales of what they are and what you are. Meaning that if you're seeing somebody in their light or lighthearted and you're going through it and you just don't get it, you're receiving the information of them, you're processing it through your mind, through your heart, you're having emotions, and now your body goes into help, help, rescue, help. And how it helps you is by putting them in a calibration that is equal to yours. And because you were in a low state when you started judging them, it is going to, by default, create a storyline that brings them down to that same read. And that is double painful for you, because now you are bearing the weight and the shame of being at a lower frequency. And now you are carrying the weight and the shame of bringing them down in theirs, whether consciously or not. Eventually, we always come back to those that we judged, and we see how we judged them, and then we have to self-forgive, and that's more work. Teens have it so much harder right now because the ability to judge and compare and be receiving information of those that we perceive that have it better or worse or whatever, and then our body and our nervous system coming up with information that balances the scale so that we're all equal. That's a lot of work. And teens didn't have access to be looking in on people's life as much as now with social media. So now the information and the necessity to read the audience and to calibrate the audience to be in a comforting space for us becomes double, triple. It just becomes overwhelming. But every teen is one hand motion away from having access to an outside world and feeling like it is time to really read and receive the room and calibrate the room. And so there again, you're either scrolling to entertain, or you are scrolling and without knowing, judging and comparing. And now not only are you over processing information, even though you judge the other person, there's a part of that that stays with you and now makes you judge yourself. Because judgment always is truly as judging ourselves first. That's exhausting. Me even talking about it is exhausting. Why would the dark forces want your nervous system so oversaturated so that you can get to the point where you are going to be on this island and decide that nobody here could possibly get you? The ultimate goal of these dark forces is to make you feel so alone, because your divine inheritance is to return to unity consciousness, to be part of this big universal heart that has you and will always return you to your light. So if you have a moment of nobody here gets me, everyone here is against me, it's so hard to be me, it's going to convince you to just tap out. And you have eternal life and you'll probably be back and you'll have accumulated more karma. So it's like you're back here with more work to do. When you feel like tapping out, that's really an invitation to tap in. It's so important to remember that. Another thing that's so important and why this starts showing up in teen years is that as we go into puberty and this freedom and this awareness that we have free will and this let's return to light by choosing it this time, as you're going into this, it is where our biggest pains are going to surface because your biggest pain is tied to your biggest purpose. Your soul came here to do something big, beautiful, but it's tied to your pain. So at this age, around the same time as this tethering to the light starts to be more etheric, it's like less of the rope, it's more etheric so you can choose it. You're also going to start to have experiences that bring awareness to what your biggest pain point is, but it's not for the purpose of bringing you down. It is for the purpose of giving your life direction. I look at my daughter, once again, she gives me permission to share a lot more than I am, but separation anxiety is a big one for her. She's got BPD and separation anxiety is a big one for her, especially for me. And this really surfaced in childhood for her. And of course, it hit like a culmination point where I was going through a divorce with her dad and she wasn't getting to see me that much. So I understand at a soul level, this is something that she chose to overcome here. This is going to really hit a boiling point around this age. It doesn't make it easier, right? We have conceptual knowing that that's what's happening, but we still have to experience it. It's not easier. But at the same time, I look at her and like, wow, when she overcomes this, the people she'll be able to help, her messaging, I see her as a big unifying force, calling in relationships and all the things. Like I see the power in it, but it had to come out as a pain point first for the opportunity to be present. And a lot of teens, preteens start to have experiences that let your pain points be known. And it is important for you to know that your pain point is tied to your purpose point and not to tap out or want to tap out before you even explored what that could look like because purpose is really the abundance of life. You can be here and be convinced by all these TikTok videos that you watch, how to manifest millions, how to do whatever, but you can have a monetary currency rich life and have zero abundance because abundance is fueled by purpose. So this is gold. Your darkest moment is ushering in your biggest gold opportunity. You don't need to bypass it. You don't need to just jump into that knowing and be like, oh, this is nothing. You can go into the experience, but this is your own soul designed school to understand. Okay, this is the pain point. Got it. I understand the assignment. I'm going to see how I navigate out of this one. And it's going to be so tied to the abundant life that I came here to live. Beautiful. But the darkness wants you to be stuck in that lostness and wants you to be on an island. And it's nothing outside of you because just like that tethering to the light starts to loosen up a little bit, the darkness has no tether on you. All it does is have sneaky little minions that can influence the thoughts that are already in your mind. So, two super important practices that I think all teens need to exercise is a quiet 5-10 minute. Don't call it meditation, don't call it anything, just quiet time where your only job and objective is to silence the thoughts that want to come into your mind. Because this tells your mind, hey, I run the show. You work for me, not the other way around. But if you don't make time to silence the mind is really easily consumed by all the information going around. And these days it is amplified to be keeping you from a place of fragmentation. And fragmentation is by default suffering. And you want to talk about separation anxiety, you're walking around with separation anxiety from your own self. That is why we have so much anxiety. So many souls are walking around disconnected from themselves. And they're going to project that it's the relationships, it's the mother, it's the father, and I'm not discrediting anything of that. But it starts with self. So if you have anxiety, you have separation anxiety, these are all things that start with the soul. You need to come back to wholeness and to self. So if your only practice becomes finding times to sit quietly and acknowledge that there are thoughts that are going to want to come in, but I am the one running the show. And while I don't know how to fix them all, I can at least tell them, "Zzz, not now." Take back the power of the mind. 2, take back the power of consumption. It takes a lot a self-awareness to know that, hey, I am consuming way too much TikTok, too much social media. The power of the awareness is key because it tells your free will, hey, I still run the show. I am choosing this. Maybe step one, you're not going to be able to minimize it, but you're at least aware and you start picking up your phone with more awareness that you are choosing to overconsume information and you are choosing to step into a place of numbing and artificial peace. And your emotions have a contractual agreement with your heart intelligence to be there waiting for you when you get back. And if they're not getting your attention, they might have a contractual agreement with you to be escalated because they've been ignored for so long. And your heart is here to run the show, not the algorithms. So if you're giving away the power of your heart intelligence to the algorithms, the emotions are going to boil up to get your attention because that's how much you are loved. That is how much you're being called to return to love. Love is a force that unifies. You are being invited to not tap out, but tap in. And the invitation is only as loud as it needs to be based on how much you have really put it outside of you. So, wow, what a big invitation. What a shitty season I'm in. What a dark space I'm in. That is just how powerful my heart is. That is the power of my love. The power of my love is so big that it has to give me this grand invitation to please return to self. That is how much I am loved in my oneness, that I will not neglect myself and not let myself numb out in separation. And I love myself enough to know that these thoughts that are dark are consuming me and this is not me. And while I play tough, I'm hurting. And so my heart is like crying for attention because it loves me and it starts with me. So while your first instinct is going to be to explode on everybody and blame everybody, take back the power of your heart, take back the power of your love, and sit with yourself. So silence the mind, limit the consumption, and start to look at your big emotional outbreaks as beautiful invitations and signs of love from your higher self to return to the most important soul that it can at this time, which is you. You can receive it as love. You can start to have something to work with here. It is not too much. It is beautifully designed to meet you at the level of your potency. So if your pain feels so big, imagine how big your purpose is. Oh my gosh, the biggest souls have the biggest lessons because they have the biggest missions to come and fulfill. And the dark manipulative forces will love nothing more than to hijack those souls to work for them. But you are not here for that. You are just being given the space and the freedom to choose to return to your light tethering. It's going to take some self awareness to know that one, those thoughts are not mine. Two, these people love me. They're not against me. And three, I am consuming too much information. And while I might convince myself in the moment that it's good for me, it is actually fragmenting my soul and causing me more suffering. If you can do that, you are gold and starting to reclaim your light. You don't have to have all the answers of how you get to the purpose side. You just have to have notes of awareness that what is showing up is not you, is not yours, and is not in line with immaculate truth. Does it hurt? Does it feel so real in the moment? Yes. This is not me invalidating any of those feelings. This is me reminding you that the most valid feeling is the one of returning to your light. And that is the only one that's going to bring you peace. Tapping out, not the answer. Wanting to tap out is an invitation to tap in. And the tapping in holds the greatest good for you. And it doesn't have to be long and hard. Another thing that I think presents itself as a challenge to a lot of teens these days is the family blueprint shifting and ascending. We are going into new earth curriculum, new earth ways, and the family dynamics and the family blueprints have been shifting for some time. I mean, the show Modern Family, great example, right? And they brought lightheartedness to it, but families are now having more freedom for the blueprint of it to change. And what that means is there's a lot more children that are with divorced parents, step parents, foster parents, all sorts of parents. For a child to hold itself in the light while ushering in a new family blueprint is challenging. So I am giving you all the praise if you are one of those children that has been in these homes because I understand that at a soul level, you chose to come here in this period of earth ascending and all of these relationship blueprints looking different. But as a human level, when you're in it, it can feel very ungrounding And at times it can feel like, why does Zusi Q get that and I get this? But my invitation to you is to look at it not as why do they get this and why do I get this, as opposed to I got this for my greatest good and I'm going to uncover the gifts here. I chose this. I cannot wait to see how this is for the good. Everybody's going to go through their own darkness initiation, and whatever it takes one person to get to the, let's say, -9 frequency, and what it takes another is going to be drastically different. And that is very based on wiring and how we agree to receive information in this lifetime to serve our highest purpose and pain and mission. And so the art of compassion is important to really have in your heart. You might perceive this kid on social as living the life and is quote unquote popular and has a perfect relationship and great hair, whatever, but you don't know what is taking them to their -9 frequency. I'm just making that number up. But you have to have compassion to know that something is. When you have compassion, that they also know what it's like to be there, you also have this universal heart pulling you together, this unity consciousness that says, hey, I'm not alone. And while they are showing light right now and I feel in my dark, I know that they also have to be in the dark because we're in this realm together. And so I can't wait for me to show that kind of light that I'm perceiving at this moment. All of a sudden, you're unified. You're not you against them. Take cautionary steps to not judge in a way that isolates you from others. The darkness loves that. You being on an island, you being disconnected from your purpose, that is what gives a point to the shadow and takes away from the light. But guess what? You are the light. And the only way that you cannot win to return to that light is by choosing not to. You have this free will, this freedom. Another thing that is so challenging for our teens right now, and I'm speaking them all because I have so much adoration, respect, and reverence for our teens right now. They came in at a very challenging time. And I'm not saying that times were not challenging a long time ago. And that's something that I feel like I can hear some people in the audience be like, when I was young. Okay, listen, the children that are coming in are more sensitive. And we can make jokes that they're oversensitive. But here's the thing, we are working towards a new human that has telepathic abilities, that has all senses fully activated. So they have to come in more sensitive. That is part of the wiring. And what happens is that if we are not aware of how sensitive they are, and if you children are not aware of how sensitive you are overwhelming your own nervous system. It's not your parents, it's not your siblings, it's not school. It is you by how you choose to consume information often. But I think it's important for adults to know that, yeah, they're sensitive. And it's not because they're becoming softer, it's because they're becoming more enlightened. They're becoming the new human. So, what maybe a child in the 20s and a child now can perceive information wise and compute through their nervous system, emotional system, and all the bodies, it's a whole different line of work for a child now than a child then. But that is because they're evolving to become something that we were a little further from then. And that's not discrediting that in the 20s or whatever you had it rough. It's just bringing awareness to the fact that they're little computers receiving and computing information differently. And the sooner we can just establish that, the sooner that we can help them see the power in it and not hold them down to the victimhood of it. So we help our children by acknowledging, yes, you are more sensitive, but also reminding them, yes, this is part of your gifts and your superpower. You are ushering in a whole new level of more sensitive human. It's a blessing. But I just want to remind you that you chose to come here at this time because you are a kick ass revolutionary soul. But in order to really answer that calling that you came here to have, you have to understand what it's like to give away your power so you can understand and claim the sovereignty of being in it and serve. It is an invitation and it is a very exciting time. A lot of the souls that volunteered to be here at this time knew that they would have the stamina to do so. And it's going to be tempting for some to want to tap out because everything feels too much. But at that point, you just have to know that what is too much is the information that you are electing to take on as yours. That is what is too much. If you really return to self, you really give yourself the mental power back, if you really give yourself the emotional power back to know that all is love, even the person that is triggering you. And I think everybody needs to hear this. The person that triggers you the most might be your best buddy in a higher dimension and have elected to come down here and be the one that shows you XYZ for your expansion. So if you can think about that, the person that pisses you off the most, the one that you want to put on an island against yours, That might be your best friend in a higher dimension. And you guys might have played out the game plan and be like, I'm going to come and I'm going to be your mirror and this and this and this to help you expand this and this and this. And we are going to do this. And at one point, we will return to love and we know it. But we're going to play the part that we chose to play in each other's lives for our greatest good. When you surrender the perspective that everything is for your greatest good, you really release the responsibility that it's your job to understand how. That's a lot of weight to carry. To need to understand why, to need to see our perception of justice play out, a lot of weight to carry. Ask yourself, is it more important for me to be happy or is it more important for me to be right? Choose joy. Because if you make it your priority to be in joy, you will start to give grace where grace is needed. You will start to receive higher understanding of that which we don't fully understand, and you will start to set your soul free. And these weights and these burdens and all of this is carried by adults just the same. And what happens is that if you don't recognize the pattern in your teens, it has an obligation to return to show you so that you can finally transcend it. So, more than likely, any adult that has had suicidal thoughts had a moment in their teens where they thought, it'd be easier to tap out. And that was their greatest invitation to tap in, but they didn't really understand it as that assignment. So, adults having these thoughts, it's a wiring that still lives inside of you that started in your teens. And it stems from the painful separation of that tetherness to light. But if we can just remember, just because it is not tethered for us, doesn't mean it's not there. It actually has so much more meaning where it's not tethered for us and we get to choose it. It was there the whole time. I just had to remember it, choose it, and claim it. Wow, this could have been a lot easier if I'd known that. And those minions could have just been on their minion way if I had known that. So I am trying to help you know that. And the knowing is key, but then enters the practice. Once you have something in your scope of knowing, then you got to really put it to practice. And that's where the magic happens because knowing without action is missed opportunity. Now, rage, I was going to talk about rage because that's another sphere of dissension and something that we are to overcome to go into our highest power. What rage is, it's like the fire alarm going off. When your heart is so overwhelmed with emotion that it now cannot feel, it is shutting down. So it is going to go into rage, which just projects all the pain out. So rage puts you in a space where you have completely blocked your heart intelligence and then is now just projecting out all the pain and overwhelm. It is like this red flag, like, help me, love me, save me. I'm hurting in here. But instead of coming across as somebody that is seeking help, it makes you very unhelpable because it creates this scary barrier. Like, who wants to go to a raging person and be like, let me hold you? Do you need a hug? Like, who wants to do that? Right. And I have witnessed this once again. My greatest teacher, and I know it's part of her purpose. So I am actually helping give it purpose by speaking on it, my daughter. And when I see her go into rage mode, it's like, how is this little person capable of that? The things that I've witnessed her do when enraged. And I know that there is a threshold where humans enter rage mode to the point where they start doing things that they're really gonna regret. And it comes across as harm, whether self or others. And at that point, you have really given the reins over to these dark entities to run your show because you have shut down the intelligence that has the power to return you to self. And it is love. And it is like coming to yourself and be like, I'm just hurting. But I know these people love me. I'm just hurting, but I know I'm not alone. I'm hurting, but I know that I am love. But when you enter rage mode, you have completely shut that down and given away the key to your universal heart. So what is there to do? Claim it back. Power of your thought, power of your word. Remind yourself, I am love. I am. I am. Powerful statement. I is your presence. Your presence is in line with divine inheritance. It is innately of the light. It is divine. Am reminds you of the cadence of this rhythm of being here that we elected to be here. So if you can just return to your I am, knowing that you don't have to understand anything and let that be the gift. I don't understand why this hurts so much, but I am choosing to return to the light and I'm electing to be shown and also going to use my free will in its power and choose how much information can I actually consume now that I know how it affects me and knowing who are the people in my life that are actually here to be guides for me to return to self. And I am looking at them as my enemy, because that is the strategic, dark force energy going through the power of your mind, wanting to put you on an island so that it can one day just feel like too much. Whether you're a teen watching or you're an adult, remembering that perhaps this started as a teen or you're just an adult going through it. We're all going to have seasons of going through it, right? It just is part of this growth. You got to contract to expand, and the contraction season hurts. But on the other side is the greatest expansion, and we earn it by really showing ourselves that we could power through and learn something and come out stronger. So, my invitation to you is to observe your thoughts, create the space where you can silence your thoughts. If the only practice becomes like, I'm going to practice putting that thought on a conveyor belt and just sending it off for 5 minutes. 2, start to see all the places where you're creating painful separation between yourself and your loved ones, or yourself and people that are maybe here to inspire you or help bring you towards the light. The people that we love the most or that shine the most light on us are the ones that become our greatest punching bags, because we know deep down at a soul level that they are safe. They're safe for us to punch. But the kicker of that is that when we're punching those loved ones, we're actually punching ourselves. And this is metaphorical, guys. You don't have to actually punch them. When we are hurting them, we are actually hurting ourselves, because we know that they are here to help us and we are resisting the very forces that are returning us to love. Double painful. So return to your heart intelligence of knowing that you are in unity consciousness, and even the outside world, which you compare with and perceive as being something else, start to look at it as a piece of you, and just know with certainty that they also have their moments. And while you might not be witnessing those moments, actually start to look at them and be like, huh, if they can have moments like me and show up like that, I can too. So start to look at them as mirrors of you, not just a comparison bar that you don't feel you can live up to. They're a mirror. You're seeing one aspect of them, you might not be seeing the other. So they're showing you aspects of you that you have not given yourself permission to see. Receive the gift. And lastly, just remember that you are here at a pivotal time, and everything that might feel like too much or an invitation to tap out is an invitation to tap in, because you have skills and you have soul qualities that made you very qualified to be here at this time. It would be the greatest flex for the darkness for you to think otherwise. But nothing here that you are going through is too much. Everything is for your greatest good. And you can just have certainty on that. This is for my greatest good. This is for my greatest good. And then the work becomes seeing how. Even better, the work becomes allowing us to be shown how, and releasing the grip on timing, knowing that the only tethering that we're here to have is the tethering to our divine self. We get to go through the season of not having it so we can return to the season of choosing it and wanting it, and not just wanting it, but understanding that heaven on earth becomes when we retether ourselves. And all we can want to do from there is guide others to the same, knowing that they're going to be going through their untethering season, and understanding that at teenage years is a pivotal time where this starts to happen. So have some grace. Have some grace on, teens that think that they're really going through it, because they are going through it in their world, in their perception, in their capacity. Everybody's capacity is different. It's important to understand capacity, and that is held space for with compassion. My capacity to handle something hard and someone else's capacity to handle something hard is very different. And so that is where I put on my cloak of compassion and I say, I don't know what it's like to be them, but we're all getting to the same numbers on the scale of frequency. We all have our -4 or -5. We have our positive, like we all have these numbers on the scale that we are going to experience. And my cloak of compassion allows me to know that I don't have to know why they get there so easily. I can just love them through it. We're all just working on showing up in our highest, lightest capacity. The challenges are just here to show us that we are expanding that. And as we expand our light, we expand our capacity to overcome dark. We can start looking at that as opportunities to really flex those light muscles. We can get through it so much faster. But I just want to remind you, especially you teens, but anybody that is dealing with thoughts of suicide or dealing with this feeling of being on an island and suffering in silence and nobody understands, is that you wouldn't be having these feelings so potently if the heart intelligence and the soul intelligence within you asking to please be returned to love wasn't that much bigger. And because it's there, because you feel it, you can now take back the power of your mind and design the thoughts that support you feeling in that oneness. And yes, go talk to whoever, a therapist, anything is great. But what you don't want to do is put on a diagnosis as your identity. Diagnoses are a tricky thing. Sometimes people take them as their identity. I say take it as a dot on the roadmap guiding you to your highest purpose and navigating the pain. That's great. Do not make it your cloak of identity. The only cloak of identity that you're here to wear is your cloak of light. Choose to return to it. You will have the greatest testament to share with others, and you are here to usher many to their light, which is why you are dealing with your dark, and it is going to serve, and you say that it's going to serve, but you have to choose for it to serve. You have to choose to return to the light and remind yourself every morning and every night, I am a conduit of the light. I am a conduit of the light. Return to light. It's a choice. Let it be easy. I'm going to close this up in prayer, as this has been long enough. Dear Mother, Father God, I give so much gratitude and grace to my listeners here today, whether or not they have struggled with suicidal thoughts, mental health, or they hold space for those who have, or just learning so that they can be prepared when it shows up around them. I ask for compassion to be this cloak of unity that surrounds us all, so that we can be in greater service to each other, so that we can be able to observe ourselves and know when thoughts are coming into our mind that are not ours. And we can redirect them to love, knowing that love is the powerful force that will usher in our greatest purpose, and we are ready for it. So it is, in all space and time, I am. Thank you for tuning in to the Feminae Christi podcast. Your presence here is the greatest gift. If you would like to help grow this movement and help this energetic container reach more people, it is also greatly appreciated for you to share with anybody and everybody that you feel would benefit from this container. Your likes, comments, engagement also help me to better serve you. I would love to know what lands with you, what you want more of. Until next time, go out there and shine that light.